Easy trip.
Okay, call this work session to order. First topic is an interview of a Mr. William Montero, who has applied to be on our budget committee. You have seen his application, and this is the time to ask him questions. You can start by just telling us a few things about yourself that aren't necessarily covered there and why you want to be on the budget committee.
Okay. So basically, born in DC, so I'm an East Coast guy, and then moved around the world, England for a while, and then eventually Seattle, and went to private school, mostly in Seattle, and then left that school and went in the Navy for 4 years, and went to University of Washington. Graduated, majoring mostly in mathematics and sciences, and eventually went to work for an insurance company where I became operations manager and worked as a regional manager there for a multi-million-dollar company out of New York, and then went to work writing software. Wrote software accounting systems for West Coast chain of sign companies, everything from budgeting down to general ledger and financial statements. And then I eventually bought into a company and basically ran the company and sold my portion of the company but kept the property. And moved to Seaside about 2001, give or take. We had bought our first home in Seaside and been in Seaside pretty much ever since. I've had feet in both Seattle and Seaside for many years, but mostly in Seaside. And I'm married to Robin Montero, you may know. So, other than that. And why do I want to be on the budget committee? Because I'm crazy. No, but actually it's because I haven't met a number I don't like. And I'm pretty good with spreadsheets and budgets, and I understand big companies. I've run companies in multi-million-dollar, much larger than the City of Seaside. And I've had many employees. And I feel that I could add some value to that. And it's a great way to influence how resources are allocated here in Seaside. I'm fairly close to a lot of the civic organizations and a lot of the committees here in town, so I know what's going on. And I want to make sure that we prioritize and allocate the available revenue streams that are available in the city and actually participate in the true planning process, which is the budget, as opposed to just the comp plan, which is the dream, and then the budget is actually putting it into action.
I noticed you didn't put down as one of your, and I think you were the treasurer for the trolley system.
And secretary and treasurer.
Yeah, so.
Just run out of space.
Small, too big.
What, the trolley or my house?
With listing your
Actually, I did.
volunteer activities. Yeah.
Actually, and I put down planning commissioner, but it wasn't here. That's Robin. I was planning commissioner in Shoreline and planning chair for about 4 years.
Can you talk a little bit about tough decisions? When it comes to budgeting, it's all about choices, right, and tough decisions.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about how you have made those in the past or how you would go about that on the budget committee?
Obviously, it's prioritizing. And looking at your meeting you had the other day, what was it, last Thursday? You have tough decisions here. You've got the fire department who needs equipment, and you have the police department that needs new radios. You have infrastructure for the city sewer system, and then you have the city that needs new doors and new sliding doors. And so how do you prioritize where you need it? Do you buy new furniture for the library or do you buy the doors? So those are tough decisions, and so you have to weigh which ones they are, and sometimes you have to phase in some of those expenditures. So some are capital expenditures, some you have to treat as 1-year items. But definitely prioritizing and then see what the biggest need is.
What kind of criteria would you use for prioritizing?
I usually use a grading system, and if you take something like the radios that are needed, body cameras for the police department, it's probably an expenditure that you can spread over a couple of years instead of doing it this year. And then if you need more replacement vehicles for public works, you have to look at that and say, okay, if the life of those are going to be, if it's the end of life for all those vehicles, you really do have to prioritize higher than you do for police vehicles that most of them already do. So it's just a tough decision, and you talk about it with the group and make that decision.
Any questions for us?
No. You guys have a tough job ahead of you the rest of the night.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next up. Listen, have a seat.
That's the hot seat.
The hot seat.
Hot seat, yeah. Introduce yourself and maybe back.
Hello, everyone, again. I'm Rick Crew with Kern & Thompson, the CPA firm that performed your annual audit, and I'm here to present the results of the audit for you. In kind of summary, has everybody seen and I know it's really good reading, for.
I read it.
Every page.
Every page, good, okay. So what questions do you have? Let me just kind of go through real fast, so we, just kind of give you an idea of what's going on. So the audit it's an annual financial statement audit. So what we do is we come in and we look at your internal controls, we look at compliance with Oregon laws and regulations. We follow transaction streams, we test transactions, we test, purchases, we look at the budget process and make sure that's been done and approved in compliance with Oregon regulations and things like that. So we do a lot of testing and what we call gathering evidence. Evidence basically that supports the amounts and the disclosures in the financial statements. So the amounts primarily being things like cash, your liabilities for debt, just regular payables, your capital assets, depreciation thereon, the results of the spending of different funds, from all the way from your governmental funds, which include the general government, special revenue, capital projects, and debt service, and your enterprise funds, water, sewer, and the convention center. So we look at all those activities. We test things here and there. We drive Zach crazy asking questions and giving us data and looking at things. We confirm things with outsiders like the amount of your debt and the cash that you have on hand and with the state treasurer. So we gather all this stuff up to come up with a report that puts together the financial statements. The financial statements are, present the financial picture of the condition of the city as of the end of its fiscal year and the results of its operations for the fiscal year. And that also includes its comparison by specific fund to what was budgeted and how it turned out. So we put all that together with some notes that describe things like accounting policies and more specifics on what makes up the components of debt and when it's due and the fixed assets and the pension that you have for the employees into the financial statement, and then we put our report card on it, which is called the independent auditor's opinion. And that opinion is about 3 pages long. Right off the bat, the first part of the opinion basically is a report card. It just says that we've audited these financial statements in accordance with what's called generally accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards. And in our opinion, these statements are correctly stated as of and for the end of the year, fiscal year June 30, 2024. And then the rest of the opinion basically describes how we got that, which is what I just kind of explained to you, that we gather evidence, we look at compliance with laws and regulations, we look at internal controls, we test things and gather all this evidence to support this opinion that we have. So in layman's terms, this is what's called a clean opinion. It means that the numbers are accurate, they're reported in the right period, the fund descriptions are appropriate, the transactions in those funds and accumulated as well are fair, they're accurate, they're precise, and they show that what we consider to be the true financial condition of the city and the results of its operations and its various activities for the year. Now it's a real thick report, but right after the auditor's opinion is what's called the management's discussion and analysis. That's where we kind of summarize some things and point out highlights. Like how did the city do for the year, and, you know, what makes up a fund, what makes up the government part of it, and what makes up what we call the enterprise part of it. And then it takes a really high, and you've seen this page, I'm sure. Basically, it shows, it's kind of like the balance sheet, but it's comparative, and it's split between the governmental activities and the enterprise activities, compared this year to the year before, and then in total this year to the year before. So one of the highlights just to point out is that the total assets of the city grew by about $5 million altogether. Then the liabilities stayed relatively the same. So not that you didn't pay down, you paid down debt, but you acquired some new liabilities. And there's also the pension liability fluctuates a lot, but that stayed pretty constant. And the result of that is your net assets, or the equity, the net position of the city also grew by about $5 million. In total, that's combined. Most of that growth was in what we call the governmental activities, the business type, or the enterprise activities, which is the water fund, the sewer fund, and the convention center. They more or less break even or depend a little bit on the government activities to keep going, but that's why it's all one big entity. So all in all, it was, you know, a positive year as far as, you know, the generation of revenue and the uses of those revenues. There was a lot of money that went into some infrastructure replacements and improvements. There's still some in progress that's carrying forward. There's, right after the end of this year, and it's a note that we have, some money that had been accumulated from
ARPA funds.
Yeah, ARPA funds. Where you use that to acquire some parkland and create some more open space, which is one of the allowable things of that. And that'll be something that we'll report in the next year. Did you create any new funds? There was one or two little new funds, I think. But basically everything is in here. And there's also a bird's eye view of the revenue and expenditures, what we call kind of on a real basis. So it's not compared to budget here, but it's highly summarized again. So this year, government activities and enterprise activities compared to last year, government and enterprise, and then in total. So you can kind of get a feel for what happened. Total revenues grew from about 27.5 million to about 32 million. So there's that growth of, you know, about $5 million or so, while expenditures increased just not quite $1 million, a little over $1 million. The net result was a 5.5 million increase in equity and net position as a whole for the entity as a whole. And then there's other little things in here showing like beginning balances and how expenditures are broken down between like the general fund, the water and sewer funds. The statements themselves have a lot more detail as far as the assets, liabilities, and all that sort of thing. On both, there's like two bases, what we call the government-wide basis. So where this balance sheet, if you know, we look at everything, so it's got cash, it accounts for the capital expenditures that are your capital assets that are being depreciated as they're used up over the years, as well as the long-term debt, where you've got money borrowed and you're paying that back, and the liabilities for the pension. That's usually a pretty significant part of it. And then there's also what we call, right after that, the governmental funds. So the governmental funds are almost kind of like a cash basis, sort of. It doesn't. This balance sheet doesn't have the capital assets capitalized in it, or the long-term debt, obligations in it. It shows more of what's currently your current assets and liabilities, if you will, the cash, the payables and receivables, like property tax receivables and things of that nature. And that's just something that's required under GAAP for a government entity. What's the other part that's in here is between each of these, between the two types of balance sheets and the two types of income statements, there's a reconciliation between each one. So you can see, okay, fund balance, which is equity for the governmental presentation, how does that relate to net assets or the equity in the whole as a whole? And this breaks it down. So the reader, once you get into the first 20 pages, you can kind of see the big picture as well as a little bit more detail. And I know Steve's laughing because there's a lot of detail. Then the notes that go on, they describe the accounting policies, and it's all required disclosures. Probably 70% of the notes in this, and I say this on all my clients, not just government, my nonprofit, for-profit clients, but 70% of the note disclosures are here because someone got sued in the last 30 or 40 years. So now you got to have a disclosure, and it has a lot of detail on mostly the debt, the changes in capital assets, and the pension. There's a lot of detail on the pension things, as well as things like transfers between funds. There's a summary of that, kind of showing each fund what was transferred in or out, or there's some like interfund borrowing, what we call a due to or due from, so interfund liabilities and assets between the different funds. So that's what the notes describe. And then the bulk of about half the report is basically, there's a statement for about every single fund that's budgeted, as far as what you call a legal budget. And it shows your original budget, if there was a change budget, and then that compared to actual, and then a variance, plus or minus, how did you do? So if you a reader wants to zero down and, okay, how did the public safety fund do? You can go right to it and see that, they pretty much broke even for the year, so the budget was pretty close. And so that's, and that's what most of the funds demonstrate. There were some funds that were a little bit over expended in a few spots, but overall it's pretty close to it. And this is, it's a pretty complex set of financial statements for a city this size, but it's, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but again, our job is to attest to this, to test these things and provide our stamp of approval on it. It's management's job for all the content of it. And we provide assistance in getting it compiled into this format. So as part of doing that, we require management to give us what we call representations that basically say, we've given you all the information you need, we haven't prevented you from talking to any of you if we wanted to, or just confirming things with outsiders. We don't have anything in here that we haven't said or that isn't reflected. Our accounting has been reconciled and up to date, and again, we tested that. So that's all part of our opinion that we asked for. There's a little letter, what we call the audit letters. In writing, we put something in here that basically says, how did the audit go? Well, I kind of told you what it says. The audit went very well. This is our second year. So there's been a lot of, the first year was, it was hard. It's a big beast to kind of take over. Second year went pretty well, and I'm looking forward to a third year here that's going to be, we'll get done before December.
Yeah.
No pressure, but we'll.
Pressure.
Okay.
How much easier will the new system be to provide the information?
So providing the information, 100%. There might be some quirks with where to find reports and how to put things into time periods and making sure things are in the right place. But in terms of pulling the information out of the system in a usable format, it should be night and day.
I'm really excited for it because Zach showed me just a few little screens of it, and it's like, this is good. And yet-
Does the audit,
You can go down.
There's actually an interface.
Heidi has a question.
Yeah.
does the audit verify any asset seizures done by the police department?
No, that's kind of beyond our scope.
Okay.
But the audit does contain what we call, the city has what's called a component unit, the Urban Renewal Agency. So it's blended into the main report, but we also then pull those funds out. I think there's 3 funds left in the agency, so it's presented in this separate report. And it's the same thing, the results our opinion is what's called a clean opinion. These present fairly. And then in both reports, there's also there's 2 other little reports included in it. And they're parts of the report card. So one is called the report in accordance with Oregon minimum audit standards. And as I said, we test things that are to make sure you're in compliance with Oregon specific rules. Oregon's a unique state that it has its own set of rules and it wants a separate opinion on that.
Surprise.
So toward the back of each report, there's a 2-page another 2-page letter that basically says we tested these things in accord with minimum, requirements, and it lists the different ORS codes that apply to the city, and that it's kind of a negative assurance type report. It says we didn't find anything that was out of compliance in either the big picture or the component unit by itself. And then I think there's 1 or 2 of your debt requirements, your debt obligations, where they require what's called government auditing standards. So it's kind of like another thing to put on top. So there's a little separate report card on that. It's the same kind of thing. We look at just laws and regulations related to what the compliance they might have. And it kind of all blends in because Oregon kind of matches a lot of that. So we're testing one thing, but we give a separate report on that called the Report on Compliance and Internal Controls in accordance with government auditing standards. And it says that based on our report, nothing came to our attention that said you were out of compliance and that your controls were sound as well. So.
Last year, we made some changes. You mentioned the retirement fund or the pension fund several times. We made some changes to improve our position with that. How is that working out?
I believe the fund had a positive, it's kind of tricky, but the fund itself, it grew. And basically the assets increased by about just under $2.5 million. So part of that is market driven as well. The other part is, the actuarial assumptions they use. And part of those assumptions are based on what you're talking about, some of the changes you wanted to make. So the actuaries figured that out. And so while the liability grew as well, the assets grew.
So the city's in a better
The city's in a better position from that standpoint, yes.
Does that 2.5 play into the 5 million? Is that basically half of the 5 million?
No, I'm glad you pointed that out. The fund for the retirement, it's called a fiduciary fund, so it's not rolled up into that. So that's separate by itself. For obvious reasons, they don't want to invade that fund for anything used by the city, but because it's the city's own retirement fund, we have to put it in here. Because you've opted to have your own. If you were part of the state PERS, you wouldn't have this thing separate. You'd still have liability on one side. So here, this shows the assets, and then the liability is the city's, of course. I'm glad you asked that. So did I stay within the 20 minutes? Is that?
I think you did, yeah.
And at any time during the year, and we talk a lot throughout the year, of course, but anytime in the year, if you have a question or a concern, I'm at your service. And I don't charge for phone calls. I don't want anybody to be afraid to call us. And some things may come up where you got a question, and talking with Zach and Spencer, it's like, well, maybe let's bounce this off the auditor. So that's what we're here for as well. So we'd rather everything button up before we get to trying to figure it out at the end. And that's always been a really good relationship we have. I appreciate that. And I think it works well. So.
Just a general question, back from my years of doing this kind of thing, seemed like every year there were significant additional parameters put on the notes and how many things you had to do. Has that slowed down at all?
Well, at least for this year it did. There weren't any new there was one minor new pronouncement that's in here. It's called Sabita.
That's all right, I don't.
But anyway.
I didn't compare last year to see this year to see which note was new.
It just added one little note, but yes, that onslaught the past few years have been
Terrible.
Horrendous. And they got some in the future that they're supposed to come into play, but I think for the most part it's going to quiet down for what affects this city anyway. So now next year you will, because of that expenditure for the park. You're going to you have to add on to this what's called a single audit. And that, and luckily you just have one transaction I have to test instead of 25. It'll add about 5 or 6 more pages to the report, basically, and another, like in a report card to that. So, but that's really the extent of it there. So.
And I'll mention this in the meeting too, but kudos to Zach and you know, the improvement over last year, getting it done and all the headaches you've had to go through. This is your second year of doing this, so that's great.
Yeah, we did our best to learn from the first.
Right.
He's probably being generous right now, but,
Well, but to get to a, you know, completely clean, you know, nothing at all, that's great. That's where we want to be.
Yeah, if you remember last year, we did have some,
Yeah, a couple of things.
And one of the first things we do is say, okay, how did you fix these things?
Right.
So they were fixed. And I don't think we had our adjustments. We usually have some adjustments, but they're usually more of an accounting assistance than an audit error adjustment. There might have been one or two little things, but they were pretty minor, and that's kind of normal. So.
And even especially with using an antiquated system, I'm gonna add on to the kudos, because that can make things a little more difficult too.
you know, hats off to my staff. I mean, they work just as hard at this as I do, so. Liga and Wendy and Randy and Jessica and Anna, hats off to them too.
Heidi, anything? This does come back in the council meeting where we make the formal acceptance. Remember, it's acceptance, not approval. We can't, I mean, we approve your work.
Of course, yes.
But officially, we accept it.
Okay.
And very pleased to.
Okay.
So you do have to hang around just a little while.
I'm happy to do that. So.
We tried to put it towards the beginning of the meeting so you can get home.
I don't want to put everybody to sleep right now.
Well, maybe.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, I can throw it on if you want.
This just for the rest of you, this turns out, you know, when somebody has a question, this is usually the best place to go. The budget itself, yeah, but this has the actual numbers in it.
Yes.
So, you know, keep it as a favorite somewhere where you can just look it up.
Yeah, the budget numbers can get really convoluted with transfers. And,
And a lot of them are estimates too.
Actuals.
But this is the story here, so it's just that it is how many pages? Yeah. A lot of pages.
It's a lot of pages, yeah.
149. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
for not bringing trees.
I'll just sit back here, wait for my call.
Under our future agenda items, both Seth and I had a conversation with the folks that are gonna talk with us next. We're gonna let them have the opportunity to talk about Worldmark regarding the busking ordinance that is not here yet, okay? It's not here yet. So if you guys wanna bring 3 chairs and sit at the end of the table.
I got you.
What was that for you? Okay.
There was, the letter that went out today, did everybody else get that, or did it just come?
I got it.
Got it.
Okay. That'll become part of the public record. So, introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name is Courtney Person-Oz. I'm the VP of the Oregon Coast. I'll let you go now.
My name is Paul McGee. I'm the Director of Marketing over the Oregon Coast as well, so we're in tandem partnership.
And Brian Bruni, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at the resort here in Seaside, and local business owner as well.
Yeah, so when we've met with a few people throughout the last few years, I think what we hear a lot is, corporate, you guys come and go. You come and go. I just want to make it really super known. I'm a 5th generation Astoria girl. My dad graduated from Seaside. My mom graduated from Astoria. I'm not going anywhere. So we're not a corporate. We have the heart and the thought of the city. Our biggest ask is to, when we think of busking, right, to look at us as a way of, we are bringing incremental volume into the city. We are not out there just harassing. We actually give out a lot of incentives to go on a presentation. All those incentives are brought back into the city. Whether that is a gift card, whether that is teams up with Norma, we have a lot of partnerships throughout the city where if they go on a presentation, they come back and they spend that money in the city of Seaside, right? With that said, if they do become an owner, the average Oregonian spends $2,700 on a week of vacation here in Seaside alone. When they become an owner, they typically come back to Seaside 2 times in the same year that they came. That is just more growth and more volume that they bring in. And instead of looking at it as a harassment, we are hoping that what the city can look at it as how much actual incremental volume we bring into the city and supporting that. With that said, we also have teamed up with a local business. We teamed up with the Larson family that has the zip line and High Life Adventure Park, and they have actually came in and remodeled our area so that they can promote their business as well as with ours. And I know that on March 19th, Jana is hosting the chamber out of our area so people can actually see what we do. When I met with Spencer, I think it was November, you know, it was kind of like, hey, we're harassed, but we haven't really stepped in. So I would like to know if any of our, I know you have, because you're right there, right? But if anybody has stepped into our space in the last 60 days, into that corner.
No.
I've looked in, I
Yeah, I've
haven't
looked
walked
in.
in.
Yeah, so I think that's just something else that we would ask is we are teaming up with local businesses to promote activities and tours here in Seaside, not just something in California or in Hawaii. We're trying to keep it as local as we can because we know that when we Google Seaside, it is the #1 tourist destination on the Oregon coast. And when they do become an owner, they literally come back 2 to 3 times in that same year spending money with their family here in Seaside. That's my ask.
And another thing in here, I think that's a fundamental change is the way we go about business on the corner. It used to be that we had C&P agents out there, now it's just greeters. So for example, no one's going to be asking people on the street to go down to the presentation. It's come in and learn about it inside of our walls. So it's a little bit different of a setup.
When did that start?
We started that earlier this year when we changed over seasons. So when the summertime ends.
Because just in the last week, I've seen the same behavior as I've always seen.
What behavior?
Which is greeters.
Yes, the greeters.
Going up and meeting people, walking down the street, minding their own business.
So it's
asking them to come in and take asking them to come in and take a tour. Have you seen this? Have you done this? And it's, you know,
Not taking no's for an answer.
And it's not necessarily that first ask, but that's great. But these people, as they walk the prom and walk around Seaside, get asked multiple times, the same people. And it just becomes, I mean, at that point, it's not the greeter's fault that they've asked the person 6 or 7 times. They're not gonna remember who, you know, the thousands of people that they talk to. But the whole method of it comes off as harassing because of the multiple contacts.
And it's one thing to be greeted near the place of business. It's another thing to be followed or
Down the street.
as some of my constituents have called it, harassed and basically confronted when they're just walking down the prom, not near the place of business. And when they say, no, I live here, for the person to say, why don't you want to listen to me? And harassing. That's what has come to us from our constituents. Our residents who feel harassed, who don't want to be in that area or feel that it has become unpleasant for them to walk down the prom because every time they walk by Worldmark, they get accosted.
I have businesses right there and literally get asked every time I walk to the turnaround. You know, the marketers are great. They're not scared of a no.
So in our business rules, we're not even allowed, they're not allowed to even invite or have anybody in this county go on a tour. And also, that's not, like literally they wouldn't be able to do it, so
It doesn't stop
that
them
is
from asking.
strange.
Yeah.
You know, and
It's really not strange from our end though, because we've either seen it ourselves or had enough people coming to us where it's a consistent thing. And it's happening over and over and over. I mean, when the same person, I can think of a couple who have been approached, by their words, harassed multiple times to where they now have to go blocks out of the way in order to avoid those areas. And that's too much. And it's not sticking to your own rules.
let me give you an example. Having a couple businesses there, as I started my business 15 years ago, I would stand in front of my business and hand out menus to everybody walking by. But I didn't ask them, why don't you come in and see what we got? Why don't you come in and see what we got? I gave them some information, let them digest it, do it on their own. They can walk by, no thank you, I don't want it, great, okay. You know, they're not gonna feel like they were, harassed, which is very different than me coming up to you and saying, hey, have you seen our place? Can you come in? You want to see it? We'll give you free stuff. You know, it's a very different approach. And so I think, the approach and the duplication of that approach over and over, it'll wear on anybody.
And I think it's important to know we're not anti-Walmart. I'm a former Walmart owner, so I know how good it can be, and I've gone a lot of places on my Walmart. But it's, and the fact that you team up with our local businesses for your giveaways, that's very important. When I had a fabric store here, there was some teaming up. So that's all very important. It's not the what, it's the how. And
Yeah,
that's what we're getting the complaints about.
I agree about all the economic impact and all the partnership.
It's great. Keeps us alive during the winter.
Fabulous. There's just, that's what we strive for in this community. As somebody who has been a part of many of these tours, not at WorldMark, but in different places in the world, most of them, in fact, I can't think of one where I didn't get that pressure or the sales or the offer to go have dinner at local restaurant until I came into the building. So what I feel like the difference is here is that it's sort of outside of the premises. And that feels a little intrusive to people who are just walking down the prom and are residents of Seaside and don't want to even be approached with that conversation.
And it just happens to be at the key location that tourists and locals want to use.
Right.
And so it's, it just becomes a very negative addition to the experience Seaside is portraying.
I will say this, I think that we completely understand that we don't want people to be turned off or to harass people. That is never our intention. Honestly, we sell experience. Like that is literally the product that we sell. So that's not something that we want to do to the community, because if we hurt the community, that hurts us, because our people that are staying on our property are right there in that area. I think that we closely monitor people out there. For example, there were some people that I think maybe y'all are familiar with that are no longer with us because of their actions
100%.
and because of complaints. And I don't know, you said it was a week ago y'all went out there? Or 2 weeks?
Within the last 2 weeks, for sure.
The last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And is your business right near his as well, or?
I don't have a business downtown. I'm not sure who you're
I do.
competing with.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Oh.
okay.
I
Yeah,
thought you were
we're right-
Tsunami.
we're right
Got
there,
it,
so it's
okay.
different. That's me.
My bad, that's on me. Okay, so yes, you do have a few businesses, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the footprint that we have is way less, and also one thing that we implemented, and I can attest to this, there are strong guidelines of where they can and can't go, and the person that runs it is a vendor who works for us. So we have
Correct.
total control of where
Of
they can
guidelines.
go and guidelines and things that he can and can't do.
And so how does that monitoring
This is
happen?
all new since October or something.
Yeah, since when I met with Spencer and just drew lines of our property, that
I
we
mean,
hear.
the new vendor was after last summer season.
You mean the partnership with High Life Adventure?
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yes.
no.
Our
the-
CMP
Used
vendor?
to be Charlie.
Yeah,
Charlie is still
Charlie is still our guy.
Charlie's still-
But Charlie is more in our, yes,
But he's been given different guidelines.
100%.
100% different guidance. That's why his employees went from, it was probably 10 people to now it's literally 3 or 4 people. That's half the size.
I wonder if there isn't some change to the approach or the method that would allow us to believe that the experience that our residents and visitors are having has no opportunity to feel like they're being dragged in. I know that's their job.
Yeah, I get it, but I think that's
I was in
what-
your guys' business before. I've
What did you
done
do
it
with
before.
us? What was
Oh,
your-
I did membership camping. So it's
Oh,
the same
yeah.
thing.
Oh, okay.
But people would sign up and then we'd call them, we'd say, hey, do you want to come and take a tour? We'd have 90 minutes to get $6,000 from them. You know, you guys do 90 minutes for 30 grand.
Yeah.
You know, it's
another reason why we teamed up with the
That's what I
Larson
was just
family,
gonna say.
is because anywhere else in the world, it is tours and activities. Well, we didn't have activities timed with us. We had a blank room with popcorn, which,
And sharks,
and
and
sharks,
sharks,
and
yes,
sharks.
yes,
It doesn't really help, right? So that is why, you know, we have teamed up with them so that we have activities for them to go into, which are local activities. It is not again, somewhere from Portland that you can go on a zip line. We keep this in or go tie a thing. So to your point, we've never had that before. We've only ever had the stand outside, where are you from, let's bring you in. And now we have something that somebody would walk into the room for.
perhaps what we could see is those guidelines or the attempts that are being made to reduce that intrusiveness.
Absolutely.
To be able to make
Absolutely.
decisions based on that.
100%.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the one thing I wanted to note in this is we're being proactive, and I think in the past it has been more reactive.
Correct.
And I think that's what I want
That's good.
everyone to know is proactive actions that are happening.
Yeah, we appreciate you reaching out for sure.
We really appreciate your time.
Definitely.
Thank you.
for the
And
time.
we know we have work to do with more partnerships too, and you'll have that from us, but.
Well, this has been a major topic of discussion at my coffees with a counselor over several months. And so at my next one, I'll definitely be asking, because the people who come and talk about it are people who walk the prom a lot. And I'll ask them, have you seen changes? What's going on? And that kind of stuff. And
I'm
tell
good.
them about this.
And I'm gonna test it over the next month.
As you should, yeah.
Inspect.
Zip line opens on the 15th, so come on in. Yeah, so we appreciate your guys' time
I
tremendously, so.
haven't really been out much lately during this kind of weather, but I probably walk out there as much as anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a whole lot more problem with this issue in about 2014 and 15, right when I moved here. I don't know if they recognize me now or they've been told, leave him alone, he's the mayor. But nobody even asks me anymore.
Yeah.
And I haven't been asked this in years. Maybe they're off busy talking to other people. Maybe I'm just, looks like I'm some bum that wouldn't have any.
You're not the target audience.
You are our prime.
Oh, 100%, 100% you are. Give me 5 more minutes, no, I'm just kidding, yeah.
And usually when I have said, I live here, so, and that's the end of it.
And that's how it should be. If
Never
you live
had.
here, then
Right.
move on.
And I don't mind being asked that, even if it happens to be when I walk by and I come back by again. That's just a very simple comment. And it's all the way that your person responds back that takes care of it, so.
You know, one of the questions that I ask almost all the time at the beginning, and it's what the question is, rather than saying, do you live here? I always ask people, where are you visiting from? And that really opens people up. And if somebody says I'm a resident, then I'm carrying on my conversation with them one way. If they say, oh, I'm visiting from wherever, I have a conversation a different way. So it's also the approach.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on some of this, we, first of all, being a business owner in this town, the winters are tough, right? And I think for me, knowing what the resort does for my business, especially during the wintertime, is crucial, right? To remain in business. But the other thing I would say is, again, I've been in my role for about a year now. I'm a local, born and raised, as is Courtney. And again, we're trying to do things a little bit different than maybe what has been done over the past 20 some years, 30 some, almost 35.
You opened in
2006.
2002.
Two?
We just had
Or 2003, it was
Yeah,
right after I moved.
It's been a long
Yeah,
time.
long time.
And I've been with the company since 2014, and I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And I think, obviously, trying to move it in the direction that we are, our vendor being aware of the issues, I think moving forward, we can navigate this in a way that works for everybody.
And we'll absolutely put guidelines in and show you what those are and make them,
Yeah.
I mean,
There is no really time frame set yet. We're still working on the ordinance. So it's
We
not
wanna be ahead of
scheduled
it
to
for us,
be
so,
in
yeah,
there.
like
So
that's-
this
Yeah,
is
so,
appropriate.
yeah.
Well, I think like we talked at coffee, Steve, where, busking is a little bit different than what we do. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, kind of trying to compartmentalize where we belong in that.
And the feedback we're getting is from buskers being like, well, why are you, having to put a regulation that regulates us because of that behavior? And vice versa,
Everybody's
but it's,
doing
but, yeah, and so, that's definitely a dynamic that it affects more people than just you guys and anybody else. So it's, it's not a direction that anybody necessarily wants to go down. It's dealing with an issue. So
Yeah.
if there's other ways of doing that, then great.
Okay.
We appreciate your
Appreciate
time
it.
so much.
Thank
And we do
you.
have in detailed of our other money that we have spent throughout the community for,
We don't doubt your involvement.
just partnerships.
know.
And then if you can, go check it out, because it's the new,
actually
there's
looks
little
really
kids.
cool. It is really cool.
There's little kids
Seriously.
walking on zip lines and Sasquatches in there, and you can book tours in that room for zip line and high life, so.
That's
Nice.
good.
Yes,
That's
thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, Stace.
Got 4 minutes. Anything else? Okay, we'll close the session. I don't see you want to say something.
Mayor, say that again, I just put you on mute.
Make sure you use your raised hand thing if you want to say something.
So we see you.
Call the Seaside City Council meeting for March 10th to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Benneker? Here. Council President Morrissey is absent. Mayor Wright?
Here.
Counselor McVeigh?
Here.
Counselor Montero?
Present.
Counselor Pazalski?
Here.
Counselor Hoffman?
Here.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Seth on the birth of his son. He wasn't able to make it here tonight because of that. May I have a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's Councilor McVeigh and Councilor Pasulski. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a proclamation tonight. We don't have somebody to introduce it. This is a pretty important one anyway, so I've asked Councilor Tita Montero to read the proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Whereas child.
Nope.
There we are. Okay. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, and finding solutions requires input and action from everyone. And whereas every child is precious and deserves to grow up in a healthy, safe, nurturing environment free from the dangers and harmful effects of child abuse and neglect. And whereas our children are our most valuable resources and will shape the future of Clatsop County, Oregon. And whereas child abuse can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse. And whereas child abuse prevention succeeds through partnerships among parents, child welfare agencies, mental and physical health care providers, schools, law enforcement agencies, faith-based organizations, businesses, and community members by fostering loving, supportive, and violence-free homes. And whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness of child abuse and contribute to promote the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And whereas prevention remains the best defense for our children and families. Now, therefore, Steve Wright, Mayor of the City of Seaside, does hereby proclaim the month of April 2025 Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Seaside, and urges all citizens to recognize this month and help to improve the quality of life for all children and families.
Thank you, Councilor. Very important to remember, and it's a project for all of us to be involved with. Make sure this doesn't happen. Do we have yes, she's here tonight. Please come forward and tell us what's happening up at the high school. Something really important.
Super exciting. 2 weeks ago, our coin clash finished up. It was what I talked to you guys last time I was here. We raised a little over $1,300, and all of that was donated to the harbor. We beat Astoria, so that was super fun. This past week, we had a pep assembly. A couple of their leadership kids came down. We pied them in the face. It was super exciting. The harbor came, told us all about their organization. We gave them their money. It was super fun. I'm super glad it went great. It's my favorite activity we do, and it was my last time doing it. And then, yeah, that's all. Will probably be the last time you guys see me. Our basketball team is going to state this weekend, yes. Both of them, which is super exciting. And then after that, Alex should be back here talking to you guys.
Any questions? The games are in Forest Grove on Thursday and Friday, I think.
Yes, the boys play at 1:30 and the girls play at 8:15 p.m.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, go goals.
Good luck.
Yep.
Thank
Go
you.
goals.
Thank you. Okay, we have one public comment registration is regarding ordinance 2025-02, so we'll hold that until we get to that part in the agenda. Nobody else is registered for public comment. Is he there? Okay.
Yes, I would like. Sorry. We've got some things.
Oh, hold on. We're getting echo here. Is that on our end or his? Say your name again, Bert.
My name is Bert Adams.
All right, there we go. Your name and city of residence.
Part of the year is Seaside, Oregon. The other part is Yakult, Washington.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Honorable council members, honorable mayor, citizens of Seaside. The Seaside City Council is moving forward with an ordinance to effectively outlaw busking in the downtown core and all along the prom. Busking would only be allowed in Quartet Park. Yes, I've seen problem buskers before. People that leave a mess, people that leave their equipment overnight, people that yell at the tourists, etc. No one likes this, and no one is defending these actions. But the council is effectively outlawing all busking along the prom or in the downtown core, and it gives no path for the many responsible buskers that have been in Seaside for years and have never caused a problem. Some of these buskers live in Seaside all year round and have been busking in Seaside for over 15 years, and they have never caused a problem for the city, the citizens, or the tourists. Yet this council is dead set on making them outlaws and treating them as such. Blind Bill has been playing guitar in front of the Seashore Inn for 15 years. When he shows up, the staff brings him coffee and water for his seeing eye dog. Bill sits on a bench on the Seashore Inn's lawn and doesn't block traffic. He sings original songs, he's acoustic, and he's been known to sell CDs of his music. And Bill has never caused a problem for anyone in Seaside. Yet the council seems determined that Bill should be outlawed in Seaside. There's other sculptor or other buskers out there that have been out there for a while. Mike, the Seaside sax man's been there playing since 2008. Again, Mike's never caused a problem for anybody, and the council doesn't seem to think Mike should ever be able to play in Seaside again as a busker. I first spoke at the meeting when I first heard this was being discussed at the September 2024 Seaside Downtown Business Association meeting. At that time, I suggested that Seaside look into the many busker permitting systems that have been put in place around the country. Seaside's Pike Place Market being just one that is close by. Yet the council has refused to even look or discuss such systems. Yes, I'm a busker. I'm a sand sculptor, and I do sandcastle lessons in front of the Seashore Inn at Prom and First Avenue. And this ordinance would put me out of business and make me an outlaw. When I first came to Seaside, I asked to get a business license. I was told I didn't need one, and I needed to go to the state. The state said I didn't need one, but I had to follow some rules. I followed those rules and have had numerous discussions with Ranger Pyle as he's come by to check on things. I have a great relationship with the Seashore Inn. They allow me to use the water from their tap for my sculptures and lessons. Their guests have come down and told me that they loved watching my work and the lessons I give to the public. They've told me that they would be asking for the rooms closest to my work area on their next visit. And I don't believe I've ever had a complaint about anything I've done while busking. Yet the council has decided that I'm a bad element and need to be outlawed. I object to being grouped with those that are causing problems in Seaside. I object to an ordinance that will outlaw my activities in Seaside because others have caused problems. And frankly, I have to wonder why Seaside City Council will not even look at a busker permit system. Remember, when you outlaw buskers, only outlaws will busk. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, that was all the public comment. Any others? Okay, we'll close public comment. As I mentioned during our work session, this is not an ordinance that's been presented yet, and we are still working on it. I imagine at some point we'll have another work session.
You got another one coming.
Hmm?
Another one coming.
That was,
Dave is bringing up another one he wants to.
I have filled out my apologies. I didn't understand your guys' system. It's a little different than the system I run through.
you come up front to the microphone? Yes.
Thank you for your time. My apologies. So my name
State your name, city of residence.
My name is William Donald Gillard, also known as Willow Bill. I'm out of Wheeler, Oregon. Came here tonight to back up the artist, the busker, the person that's basically having a thing called free speech. It's one of our constitutional rights. Outside, I understand you guys are a community of Lewis and Clark. I'm gonna tell you a quick little story. I worked with William Clark's fourth generation grandson, Churchill Clark. He helped me carve the canoe that's outside your guys' place right now. 23-foot western red cedar known as the Flying Eagle. Carved by 450 kids in St. Helens, Oregon. They tell their story. You know what? Sometimes people want to be part of that story, and they want to give. Don't be in the way of people that want to give. One of the things that I'm learning myself in life. It's really important that you know when you have a bad apple, you go take that apple and throw it out of the bag, but you eat the rest of those apples and let them enjoy it and be sustenance in our body. Let it be something of value. We are just people out there. All this, don't hurt everybody's feelings. I don't even know the Sandman, dude. Sounds like a cool guy. Sounds like he brings a lot of love, a lot of happiness, and a lot of great stories to all over the world about Seaside, Oregon. So, think about the Flying Eagle that's leaving Oregon because the city council made a bad mistake and never know what to do with it. We know what to do with a human being. You care for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does any counselor wish to declare a potential conflict of interest with anything on our agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I have a motion for the approval of our consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda and pay the bills.
I'll second.
It's Councilor Binnicker and Councilor Montero. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we heard from our auditor earlier, and we're going to hear from him again. Come up, introduce yourself, have a seat, see if the green button's on, and
Well, Honorable Mayor and honorable members of the council, my name is Rick Prue from Kern & Thompson, CPA firm in Portland. We're the auditors that perform the annual financial statement audit of the City of Seaside as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2024. I met with you earlier and went in detail over the results of the report. In summary, we rendered what's called an unqualified opinion. It's what's called a clean report, a good report card on the city's financial activities as of and for the recent fiscal year. And the reports have been filed with the state of Oregon as required.
thank you very much. I suppose we could have you go clear through everything again. I'm sure the audience would love to do that, right?
No.
We just need a screen, yeah.
Yeah. The audit is filed on our website, and you're free to go and look at it. It's a good reference to see what happened over the last fiscal year. And we're halfway into the next fiscal year now. Counselors, do you have any additional questions? I wanted to make one comment, and I made this earlier, that congratulations to Zach and his crew, the city staff, all worked really well together to get this clean report. Didn't find anything wrong. Controls are in place. And we're looking forward to seeing it again next year. So, counselors, can I have a motion to accept this audit?
I move that the City of Seaside accept the audit report for the City of Seaside and its urban renewal components, and that they be filed with the city recorder.
I'll second.
What?
Seconded.
Okay, I think that was Councilor Pasalski and Councilor McVeigh. That's what I heard. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much, Rick.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate being your auditors and look forward to it in the future as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip home.
Yes.
Okay, we have openings still on our Airport Advisory Committee, our Community Center Commission, and our Parks Advisory Committee. And tonight, earlier, we have an opening on the Budget Committee. And tonight, earlier, we interviewed William Montero. Does the council wish to do anything about that?
I move that we appoint William Montero to the Budget Committee.
Second.
It's Councilor Pasalski and Councilor Binnicker. Further discussion?
I just want to make it clear that he's my brother and there is no conflict of interest.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Bill, we'll see you Wednesday at 3:00.
Lucky.
Put you right to work.
Give him that packet.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have an appeal of the Vista Ridge 2 subdivision. I asked our community development director to come give us a quick introduction. Reminder to council and everybody that the record has been closed. We will not be accepting any further testimony.
Thank you, Mayor. While we get the PowerPoint up and rolling, I apologize for the large number of pages in the packet, but there's a lot in this record brought by both the applicants and by the public for public comment. The Planning Commission held the first public hearing on this in December, and a decision was made by the commission to approve this subdivision and approve the variances in January. We came to the city council at our last meeting to hold another public hearing based on an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision. And the council had the opportunity to take in public comments and close the record, and then provide a couple of extra weeks to go through everything, because it's a lot to take in here. So we're looking at the Vista Ridge 2 subdivision. It's up off of Aldercrest in the Sunset Hills area between Aldercrest and Forest Drive. The applicants are proposing a 15-unit subdivision along the ridgeline and a cul-de-sac that will service it and become a new city street, Hemlock Court. This is a quasi-judicial land use decision, and the council's job in this situation is to take the review criteria in our code of ordinances, in our zoning ordinances, in our subdivision land partition ordinance, and review the application with those ordinances to determine if the subdivision meets the criteria that is their current laws on the books. The council can weigh previously submitted comments, any testimony that was heard at the last meeting, and any information submitted by the applicants or the appellants. As you can see, this is a scenario that has quite a few items in our ordinances that are part of the review criteria. It spans both different ordinances that we have, and very numerous different items that pertain to subdivisions and pertain to the specific zoning of this property, which is low density R1. The applicant has asked for 2 separate variances.
One, to the cul-de-sac length. Our ordinance says that a 400-foot cul-de-sac length or dead-end length is the requirement. Their cul-de-sac is around 600 to 650 feet. The second variance that's been requested is to install sidewalks on both sides of the street. The applicant has provided sidewalks on one side, and per the plan as approved by the fire department, one side of the street will have to be signed for fire lane to make sure we can get access down there. Let's talk about the cul-de-sac length first. The applicant did testify at the last meeting that there is potential to do a shorter cul-de-sac, but it's going to lead to long driveways to access the properties to that northwest side of the property, where it won't be as conducive for emergency vehicles to get to those properties. Now, with this request for a variance, they can get closer to the houses with their apparatus and actually turn around and get out a lot easier than if we had long driveways to service those properties. Part of it to help bolster some of the fire safety with those houses, each specific building permit on those houses is going to require, as a condition of approval, if approved by the council, each one of those dwellings will have an automatic fire suppression sprinkler system installed. Again, staff's recommendation is to approve this variance. We believe it's going to allow for better access for those deeper in properties. Sidewalks, the applicant did make a request for sidewalks on both sides of the street. They provided justifications for that. However, they also said at the last meeting, the attorney representing the subdivider said that they would be willing to install sidewalks on both sides of the street, should the council choose to not approve this variance. Again, we've listed, I believe, 8 conditions of approval. We made some modifications to those conditions based on some of the feedback that we heard from the council. We'll go with condition 2, which speaks to the sanitary sewer plan that will be provided. We added the language in red that they won't be able to connect to our sewer system without approval from our Public Works Department. And speaking of the sewer, as we heard in the Improvement Commission, there's opportunities for the city to work on this sewer issue that we were having right now. Same thing with the condition 3, the stormwater plan. It's going to have to be approved by Public Works prior to them installing the actual system. The remaining 4, 5, and 6 are unchanged from our previous staff report. The requirement for the fire suppression sprinkler system, utility plans with an attempt to loop the system to Forest Drive if it's feasible, and adding a setback of the 15-foot requirement by our zoning ordinance to the stream on the north end of the property. Condition 7, this condition is if the council chooses not to require sidewalks on both sides of the street. Condition 7 is there as it's not currently in their plans to do so. Condition 7 will require them to, for the final plat, put sidewalks on both sides of the street. And condition 8 requires the subdividers to follow the hazard mitigation plan for the development of the property. This chart was put together by the city manager to show the approval process that the council can look at to determine if the conditions and the findings and justifications for the approval criteria meet the ability for the council to actually approve this application. Staff's looked at the approval criteria. We've looked at the variances and the conditions, and through a combination of the findings, the conditions that are being placed on the approval and the cul-de-sac variance, staff's recommendation is that the council can approve this application utilizing those items to ensure that the ordinance requirements are met. Staff's prepared a recommended motion for tonight. The motion takes into consideration the requirement to put sidewalks on both sides of the street, which would be the council not approving that sidewalk variance, but it does approve the variance of the cul-de-sac. And again, the findings and the recommendation, those are just recommendations from staff. They're not necessarily binding on the council. The council can make a decision and changes based on their deliberations. And that's all I have for tonight.
First, any questions for Jeff?
I have a bunch. And some of them are going to seem really basic, but this isn't something that any of us are experts in, so I'm asking really basic questions to make sure I understand everything. First, I want to talk about the entry street that goes through a lot. And that street comes off of Hemlock, right?
Aldercrest.
Alder-
It's an extension
Hemlock
of Hemlock.
is the extension.
Hemlock's the extension.
Correct.
Aldercrest goes this way, Hemlock goes this way, and this is where the street would be. I want to make sure that that with the width of the street, that would be 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and sidewalks, that there's enough space in that lot to put that street in. Is that?
I'm trying to go back.
No, this is good. This is good.
So let me see if I can direct you to a page in your packet where you can blow it up. I'm not sure if they put the width in.
Well, all you have to know is what the width of that lot is and how much your streets and sidewalk is going to take up.
Right, and typically our right-of-ways are 30 or 40 feet. I just don't have off the top of my head is how wide that lot is. Typical lots in this neighborhood, standard lots in this neighborhood, I believe are 70 feet wide, is how the neighborhood that was platted with the lot that they're using for access.
Right. And I just thought of something. No bicycle lanes are required, right?
Not something in here, no.
Also in that lot, there's a stream. And if I'm looking at this map right, it looks like that small box where the stream is says that it's a wetland, riverine flow through, I don't know what it means, and then there's a stream. And so does that mean you're going to put they have to put a culvert in there or what?
There's already a culvert and that diverts the stormwater coming off of Aldercrest down into that stream through that area.
Okay, so putting a road in there is not going to hurt that stream?
If they have to cross the stream, that's additional permitting by the Division of State Lands that they'd have to address.
Okay, so we don't have to mention that anywhere, that if you have to cross the stream, you have to get this permit?
There'll be additional permitting requirements when they apply for their grade and fill permit to actually start developing the land.
Okay. All right, I made a lot of notes to myself. Let me just find them all. One of the things that it's mentioned several times is that there's 15 lots, but given 15 dwellings, but given what's going on in the state of Oregon, we could be required to allow and permit duplexes and ADUs on those lots.
That's
which
correct.
Would, if every lot, and they're very big lots, if every lot went with a duplex or an ADU, we're actually looking at 30 dwellings.
Potentially, yes.
So 15 to 30 dwellings. And I did a little computation on what that does to the traffic, and I'll get to that page in a minute. All right. So one of the things, it says, a cul-de-sac shall be as short as possible, shall have a maximum length of 400 feet, and shall serve building sites for not more than 18 dwelling units. How will we make sure if we permit a cul-de-sac there that they don't exceed 18 dwelling units?
That's a difficult one to navigate because the state law has changed to allow for duplexes and to allow for ADUs. Just doing some preliminary digging today, the subdivision and land partition ordinance was written in 1974 and was updated in 1996 or 1995 and hasn't been touched since. So we have a lot of out-of-date codes, and I don't know if there's a way for us to prohibit the developer from utilizing the land to its capacity based on current state laws that do trump our codes.
So we could end up having a 600-foot cul-de-sac and 30 dwellings.
Potentially, or a 400-foot cul-de-sac with 30 dwellings, just accessed by longer driveways.
Okay. All right. Just want to.
Please keep in mind that we are reviewing what is in our current law. We can't look
I
at
understand.
things that are
I know,
beyond
but
that.
the state of Oregon on top
The
of that
state
has
can
added
override,
other things.
you know, kind of most anything we've said, but we're going with what our current law is.
Well, yeah. I'm looking at, you know, the fire protection laws, et cetera, as well. I don't understand this sentence on private streets. The land divider shall provide for the permanent maintenance of any street required for access to property in a private street subdivision or major partition. And it says this criterion doesn't apply. What does that sentence even mean? What would it mean?
It's not a major partition, it's a subdivision. And this is not a private street, this is going to be a dedicated public street. So the public street needs to be built to standards set by the city. And just like a private street, however, when the final plat is submitted for this project, that street right-of-way will be dedicated to the city as a public roadway.
And on all the conditions, a lot of them say that the applicant's plan must provide this, and it doesn't say per se, and I'll get to that when I'm on the conditions. It doesn't say like deadlines, that it has to be in order to get the permit. So I'll get to that a little later. Okay, so on page 14, here's a finding. As explained in the memorandum from Civil West Engineering dated November 13th, 2024, an alternate sewage utility plan will need to be approved by the city's engineer prior to connection to the system. So does that mean even prior to the permit to build, to do anything on this development?
The grade and fill plan is just that, grade and fill. So they could start grading and filling. They could start clearing the land today without permits. We don't have a permitting requirement to cut trees down. So that could have been started when they took possession of the property. To grade the land, then it requires a grade and fill permit, which requires a grading and erosion control plan, the hazard mitigation plan to be submitted. Now, those are all designed by their engineer, and that project is supervised by their engineer. The utilities will come into play when we review civil plans for the development. And at that point is when we will, Public Works gets involved and looks at it and says, we have capacity for them to connect or not. But they're not going to be allowed to connect until that requirement is met and approved by Public Works. Without being able to connect, they'd be taking a big chance to start putting in infrastructure without a surety or a guarantee that they're going to connect.
Right. Okay, so this is the traffic, and I don't know if a traffic study has been done or is going to be required, but if you think about 15 units times 2 cars, that's 30 cars, and if each car goes in and out once a day, that's 60 trips on that ingress, I'm going to call it. If there were duplexes, then that could be up to 30 units, and that would be 120 cars per day on that road. And then take into account deliveries, let's say one delivery a day to 15 units. That's 30. So I'm estimating 150 cars a day going and trying to make turns right, left, straight, in. So I'm a little concerned about the traffic. on that. And we face this with the schools. Oh, there's not going to be a lot of traffic. Oh, there's not going to be a lot of impact. And yet, I'm starting to wonder, what about the impact on the neighborhood of all the construction vehicles and the traffic to clear the land and to build the houses up there? Because there's only a couple ways through there. Are there any kinds of requirements for the developer to, that's going to tear up streets? City's going to pay for that then? Is that how that works?
The developer has to take care of the streets if they are damaged. But again,
what about our streets?
They're public roads, so they're open to the public. It doesn't matter if the public is a developer or the public is someone that lives there. It's a public road that's open to the public to use for public purposes.
Okay. And the same utility work will be the same, any kind of utility work that needs to go on up there.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so on the conditions, I think. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the streams and the 15-foot easement for the creeks and open space. And what we've heard is that coho salmon has been seen up there. I did do a little bit of research myself, and that all comes in under, I wrote it down here, the National Marine Fishery Service. That's where that comes in. But LCDC, under Goal 5, Chapter 660, Division 23, has a whole list of conditions regarding what is required. So it's mentioned in LCDC, and these are conditions and requirements from the National Fisheries Service. So because when I questioned last time, the answer was we don't enforce those and nobody seems to know who enforces them, I am wondering about adding another condition that the developer needs to provide proof from the National Marine Fisheries Service regarding the setback requirement. Since we don't know the answer to it, and a 15-foot setback is not what is said by for salmon and coho, I'm wondering, why can't we make this a condition for the developer to bring that information to us?
Let me try to answer that. I think the answer to that is the conditions, the reason for the conditions are to ensure that the development meets the criteria in our code. So I don't think you can add conditions on there that are outside of our code. So it's really if they, for whatever reason, if they need it to meet the code as adopted today, you can add that. But unless our code, unless the criteria talks about the need to do that, you wouldn't be able to add that as a condition. That's adding something, a new requirement that doesn't exist.
But if our code isn't in step with the state's code, why would we be using a code less than the state? Because we're behind on making our codes, bringing our codes up to snuff by state requirements?
I mean, yeah, I think we know that our code is old and needs to be updated, and it's the next thing slated to start working on with the Planning Commission and City Council. But until that happens, we can only enforce for this application what's in the code.
Basically, our code is always going to be out of date, particularly when the state passes new laws like they have done recently with the housing laws. And until anybody catches up to those, I would guess that most of the state is out of compliance with their actual code.
But the state could decide to enforce it on this development at some point in there. But that's not
The
our decision
state
criteria.
or the federal could,
Right.
yes. But
But that's
according
not
to
our
code,
criteria.
our code doesn't mention it.
If the state's code trumps the city's code with respect to how many houses can fit on this plat or dwellings, why would the state's code not trump the city's code on this?
That's a good question.
It may, but we don't enforce it. It's not our position to enforce laws that are not in the city code.
I think it's a different scenario also with the housing. It's saying you must allow for this even if your code doesn't allow for this. Whereas it's a different thing here. This is not we must allow something. It could be something that we must prevent something or something like that. But it's the opposite situation.
So theoretically, in the future, the way we should write our code is to say, this code, et cetera, is whatever's current in the state code. So I don't know.
Or
if we
just,
wanna-
I think that the best practice is just to update it when the state law gets updated.
Try to keep up, yeah.
So could you go back to the page with the conditions, because that's where I've got some questions I wanted to make sure I understood. Sentence 2 on condition 1, minor modifications must be reviewed and approved by the community development director. These could be required to comply. Why doesn't this say these would be required to comply? Could be required to comply means it's at the discretion of the community development director. Would means we would impose our code issues that are applicable.
It's not the condition that's the could, it's the modification to the plan that's the could. So for example, on another subdivision that's being worked on right now, just about ready for final plat, one of the minor modifications was moving the fire department connections from being at all points in the plat to one centralized location. That was a minor modification that doesn't affect the meat and potatoes of the actual subdivision. It was more what's more convenient for the fire department, the fire code. And so through the fire department and their recommendation, we approved that minor condition.
So it became a variance?
No, it didn't become a variance because there's no code for the fire department connection. It was just not they weren't exactly placed where their preliminary plat put them.
But I read this to say, these could be required to comply with other code issues applicable.
But they're not.
Why wouldn't it be would?
They're not variances. They're not variances to the code. They're just changes to the plat.
But they could need a change, and that change, depending on what the change is, may have to follow whatever the code is.
Yes.
I think that's what
That
it's saying.
sentence allows you not to follow the code when you use the word could. If you change it to the
I
word
think the question
would-
is, what is these referring to?
Yeah.
All types of things come up. I can't give you a list of what comes up.
I think these is referring to changes, right?
So for
yeah.
So for an example, where the change of where the fire department connection was, if there's some other code that requires it to be X amount of distance from the farthest building, let's say, then that may be required at the same time.
Yeah.
To make some other change because of that change that's allowed.
And
There
that's
could be
where
something else.
That's where I would say would instead of could.
I think that our code already requires it, though. I think this is more notice more than anything. That, there may be changes.
There may not be other changes that have to be done when you make that minor variance.
Or there may be no code that it has to agree
That's-
with, the change.
It may not cause a difference when that minor change is done. And that's what that's saying.
That it could be a minor modification that does not result in a code issue change. It's a minor modification, but does not have to comply with other code issues. So
Well,
that's
what
it
I'm
could or it
reading-
couldn't.
What I'm reading here is the minor modification could be required to comply with other code issues applicable to the request.
Yeah, the change may cause other issues that they have to
Why
comply.
But it
wouldn't
also
be?
may not.
Because it may not cause a
Yeah.
change to code issues.
We have
You're
to
not
leave a
understanding.
certain amount of flexibility for our community development director. That's his
Well,
job.
and it's not the question or what's being stated up there has nothing to do with his judgment. It has to do with whether the change that they're asking for triggers some other issue with the code that they're now violating instead of another. So for example, let's say they made a change on the width of the sidewalk.
Right.
But now that width of the sidewalk doesn't allow for some other thing to happen, and now they have to change, but it may not cause a change in that's required.
Let's take that same one. Minor modification, they change the width of the sidewalk to less than what the code says. They bring that minor modification to Jeff, and at this sentence says, these could be required to comply.
No,
Doesn't say-
that's not what it says.
Yeah, that's what it says.
You have to read the whole sentence.
I am reading. They could be required to comply with other code issues applicable to the request.
Because of the change.
May I? So in your example there, that change would create a code violation. This gets reviewed by the Planning Commission at final plat to make sure that it's in substantial compliance with the preliminary plat. We wouldn't approve a change that would create a code violation because the Planning Commission can turn around and reject the final plat because of that change. So this is for minor situations such as right now the plat shows the street coming into the east side of that property. Well, they may need to adjust it a few feet to the west due to some topographical issue that they've got to make. Instead of going back through the Planning Commission and the City Council to make that minor adjustment, Condition 1 gives me the flexibility to say, hey, they've consulted with our engineers agree that this is the appropriate adjustment to make this work. It's a minor adjustment. It's not substantially changing the subdivision plat.
Okay. On condition 2, on condition 1, you say minor modifications should be proposed, must be reviewed and approved by the community development director. Under 2, there's nothing there that requires the approval or acceptance, the review or the acceptance by the community development director. It's assumed, but it doesn't say there that it has to be. And I don't like to assume anything.
Condition 2 is specific to public works and to engineering. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert in engineering, so certain conditions are going to require approval from other departments. We often condition projects for approval through the fire department too, so the fire marshal gets final say off on what their expertise is. So condition 2 doesn't necessarily have to do with me and what I approve or don't. It has to do with making sure the right city department is approving it, which in this case is Public Works.
Condition 2 is not a condition on the developer, it's a condition on the city. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
It's a condition on the developer to get approval from the Public Works Department.
Okay, except I don't see anywhere on there that says they have to get approval.
I think you're missing the last line. Look at the red line that was added.
That was added later. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's why I wanted to look and I didn't see. Okay, and you did that. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Going back to Tita's question about Oregon state law trumping the city law and whether or not the city code has been changed or reflects whatever changes the state law puts in effect. I'm coming at this as a former police officer. We just had a clause in our city code that said we adapt all of the state laws when it comes to, like, say, moving traffic violations. We didn't list out every single moving traffic violation in our city code. We just said that we adopt the state laws for those offenses. I don't see how it would be any different.
The issue, though, right now, Heidi, the issue right now is that we're being told we can consider is only what's in our code right this minute. We can't add and anything else. Am I?
That's correct.
Saying that right?
That's what I heard. I'm just saying that doesn't make sense, because aren't you just setting yourself up for a lawsuit if the state law trumps ours?
I don't know.
How can we go against, if we're aware of state law, how can we just, well, our code hasn't been updated, so we're just going to ignore that? That doesn't make sense.
In applications that pertain to housing, standards have to be clear and objective. We have our ordinance that does not have clear and objective standards.
Yeah,
so yes,
that's right.
And in certain cases, we could potentially get overturned if that was decided by a court. But in this specific deliberation, the review criteria is what we're reviewing the project against. We can't take into consideration outside entities. If another outside entity wanted to get involved in the permitting process for this project, they certainly have had and have the opportunity to do so.
That's all my question.
And that would be, to Heidi's point, things that we need to look at after we get our comp plan done and get to reviewing zoning and building codes and all those other things.
And
planning codes.
With this specific project, we notified the Division of State Lands, sent them the material. We notified the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. We sent them the material. On other projects, if it has to do with the highway overlay zone, ODOT is heavily involved. We make sure to notify them and send them the material. It's just not something we can do to send every acronym in the federal and state government for every project. It would not be feasible. But the pertinent folks involved in this, like Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, were sent. They did comment. The comments are in your guys' packets
I read
on what they said.
Mm-hmm.
Heidi?
Did Heidi
she started to say something.
I did start to say something. But what I'm understanding is, I think what Tita said was there is an Oregon law on the books that contradicts what we're doing. Isn't that right, Tita?
I don't know if the law is on the books yet, but it's coming down the pike.
The option to do more housing is out there, but that's not what this plan is doing.
And the Oregon state law about the salmon and the stream.
That's not an Oregon state law, but that's under Goal 5 of LCDC.
Okay, so there isn't a state law that contradicts with this plan. Is that correct?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay, that's all I have.
Developing a plat does not mean that a building is going to be developed within the 15 feet, 50 feet, whatever the number is of the stream. It's just changing the land use.
Well,
in that area to possibly be developed.
Well, with the preliminary plat, once they meet all their conditions, the improvements are in, that's when, as Jeff was saying, it comes back to the planning commission for the final plat to make sure, did you build it the way you were supposed to? There's not a chance to change it at that point. It's just, does it match what your preliminary plat was? And if that's the case, then that gets approved and the lots are subdivided. So they can be sold off at that point. So what you are approving is what the lot layouts are going to be, including the setbacks and things like that. So it's in line. It's in the momentum's going to where someone can build on there, but with the setbacks as currently presented and as they exist in our code.
And when they sell each lot, the buyer of those lot who's going to build a house or a duplex is counting on that setback that was approved.
They will probably look at both what's on the plat, and then also our staff does a review of that when the building permit comes in to make sure it's within the setback requirements.
I have a bit of a technical question as far as our position as a quasi-judicial. When dealing with land use, at least when I was on planning commission, if the conditions are met within our building code, within our development codes and everything that is tied to this, then it is a situation where legally the city shall allow this development to happen.
That's correct. It's not discretionary. It's do they or do they not meet the criteria.
And therefore, from where we're sitting, if we were to prevent that from happening, then there could be legal action against the city going to, the next level of appeal or whatnot, that we would have to defend that decision because they were met. And being that the only two items, based on those conditions, those are the only reasons that we would be able to effectively prevent this from happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, because they're agreeing to the conditions, then those items in and of themselves, they're basically saying, well, we will comply with everything in the criteria. The only thing where they're asking for any change are the two variances.
But we don't have the ability to say, we don't want this development to go in because of X if it's not in our code and they're meeting.
You could only say that it doesn't, as applications presented, it doesn't meet one of the criteria. Okay. But even if you chose not to allow both variances, they still meet all the criteria. The criteria for the cul-de-sac is, at the city's request, and the variance for the sidewalk is optional.
For my own clarity, I've seen two different numbers when it comes to setbacks on the stream that has the salmon in it. In some places I'm seeing 15 feet, and some I'm seeing 50. Which one are we going with here, and why?
In our zoning ordinance, under standards for shoreline development, which is specific to Class 1 and Class 2 streams, it says structures, parking lots, roads, fills, and other development except decks, walkways, and bridges shall be set back a minimum distance of 15 feet from the wetland, stream, or lake boundary. So 15 feet is what our code says.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have some Class 1 streams in that area?
Yes.
What is the difference between the Class 1 and Class 2?
That has to do with the salmon bearing stream. And
which one is the salmon bearing?
I couldn't tell you. It doesn't specify that.
Seems like an important thing in this case.
So if it tells us that what the setback is for Class 2, where does it tell us the setback for Class 1?
It says
it said 1 and 2.
Class 1 and 2 are
Say
combined.
1 and 2?
If it was Class 3 or Class 4, whatever, however many classes there are,
I only
I
heard
don't
you say 2.
classify salmon
Didn't
stream,
hear
but
1 and 2.
1
yes.
and 2. That answer your question?
Sort of.
Well, it's
So if
15
those-
feet, period.
Right.
The 50 comes in maybe in the
That's somewhere
state
down
or
the
the
line
federal.
that yet come into play.
Right.
Well, it's not something that's
Not
in our
from
code.
us.
But not something that we're dealing with.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So how do those, what if those streams got reclassified? Then what?
But they're not right now.
They're not right now, yeah. This is where we're at. Okay. Are there any questions on the criteria? Are we satisfied the criteria have been met?
No.
I don't have any questions.
I don't either.
I don't know that they have been met, but could potentially be met with some of these conditions.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk about conditions next.
If they've already been met, no.
We have two variances that we have to discuss whether we want to allow or not. The cul-de-sac length and sidewalks.
I'll start.
Okay.
The cul-de-sac length, I think, makes sense. That one I am in favor of. I think the sidewalk variance does not. I would like to see sidewalks on both sides of the street. And
Agreed.
I think
I'm in agreement.
That was
I'm in agreement forward. That should be our
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're fine with
Condition 7.
Well, condition 7.
adding condition 7.
Right.
Yeah.
So I move to deny the variance request for sidewalks on both sides of the,
Make sure we're
I'm reading what he
trying.
told-
Yeah, trying to remember which order we need to do things in here. Does that sound right? We should
I don't
vote
think
on the
I don't
variance,
think I
or
don't think
just
you need
put it
to I don't think you
into
need to vote
this?
on it. I think
there's a motion.
that's to try to get a
things
consensus
have changed.
towards your final motion. So we
Yeah.
presented this motion. If you want to do something different, you can discuss that. If you want to do a different configuration of variances, I think it's have an understanding of where the council is so that you're in agreement when the final motion's made.
Well, this takes both of those into account
Correct.
with this particular motion.
I'd rather do them separate.
Does it approve the variance of the cul-de-sac length and the preliminary plat? But the preliminary plat shows sidewalk on one side.
The
But it also,
problem with this,
adopts the conditions, which the
Okay.
which the two-sided sidewalk is in the conditions.
well, we haven't voted to put it in the conditions. We have to say we're adding it to the conditions. And that does not say we're not approving the variance request.
Staff has put the conditions in there.
Yeah. We
It's on
can,
the document. If you're looking at the old one and the new one, it has it.
Okay. Well,
So are you suggesting that if we deny the sidewalk variance,
That's
this
sufficient.
this is the motion?
does it?
Yeah,
You
so
just don't have to deny it, we just
they
don't
need
explicitly approve
they
it?
Need they need the explicit approval to only do one sidewalk. Without that, then they're required to do sidewalk on both sides.
Okay.
so all of the conditions 1 through 8 are covered by that.
Yes, you can specifically say 1 through 8 with that motion if you'd like to.
Okay.
But
Because it did say, subject to the listed conditions, you could say, subject to conditions 1 through 8 in the staff report.
Are you ready for a motion, Mayor?
I think so.
I move to adopt the findings, justification statements, and conclusions in all of the staff reports and the developers' submitted information, and approve the variance to the cul-de-sac length and the preliminary plat of Vista Ridge 2 subdivision, subject to conditions 1 through 8 in the staff report.
I'll second.
It's Councilor Psalski and Councilor Binnicker. Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
So 1 nay vote and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yea votes. Okay. Motion carries. The appeal is denied.
See you in court.
Okay, we're at ordinance 2025-02. You stand up for this one? Ordinance of the City of Seaside repealing ordinance number 867, and which provided for the preservation and control of lands westward of the prom and the ocean front circa 1921. So they had passed 867 ordinances since 1899. That was a lot of work. Jeff.
Yeah, and while you were in work session, I was up tootling around in our archive. It's interesting up there, to say. A lot of information. Okay.
Much dust.
So, 867 is specific to lands lying west of 3 different subdivisions in the city: Hermosa Park, Mountain View, and Cartwright Park. Generally, Avenue or Broadway to Avenue U area, and we're specifically talking about the area right out in front of Avenue U. You can see the red lines are approximate delineations of where those subdivisions were. The ordinance regulates buildings, shops, tents, wagons, machines, motors, bicycles, and motor-driven or horse-drawn vehicles from the prom, the ocean shore, and solidifies where our promenade is as a right-of-way. So this ordinance was never rescinded. It's never codified. Most of the items in the ordinance are already in our code in various other places, whether that's the Seaside Code, which is our general code of Seaside, or the zoning code. We provide for these requirements. We've done work, I think, last year to work on e-bikes on the prom through ordinances. And we've looked at adding and have added the mobility mats to access Avenue U and the ocean shore for 12th Avenue. The main reason behind this repeal is so we can pave that 12th Avenue parking lot and actually get
Avenue U.
Avenue U, sorry.
Yeah.
12th Avenue needs to be striped. Getting Avenue U paved is the importance here.
Yeah.
This is the parking lot in question. I provided an aerial last time, but I thought we would get a picture of it this time. As you can see, the potholes actually look like they've kind of been filled.
I was going to say they look kind of small.
They look better than the last time I was there.
But you can see where our pavement ends right there near the crosswalk. That gravel makes crossing the street there challenging for folks with mobility issues. And I didn't take a picture, but where the Tides parking lot, it's a exit only into our area, but their parking lot is paved, and you can see where the gravel from ours is encroaching over their paved areas. And I think paving and staff believes paving this parking lot is definitely a benefit for the city and for the use of that mobility mat.
And wasn't there a question last time about had anybody talked to the Tides?
Yeah, I believe he's here. He was going to speak if the mayor allows public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, that was, yes.
Okay, I'll open public comments. Riley Akins signed up. You live in Seaside?
I do indeed.
Please get nice and close there.
I'm Riley Akins. I live in Seaside, Oregon. I've lived here for 2 years. I just wanted to say that I'm in support of repealing Ordinance 867. It's outdated, and it doesn't seem particularly relevant to the modern landscape in which we live. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything, Mr. Tides? And please introduce yourself and your city of residence.
Good evening. My name is Craig. I'm the general manager of the Tides.
Craig.
Craig Wasserman, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I spoke with Jeff probably about a week or so ago, and he brought this to my attention. I think it's a great idea. The pothole situation down there, as everybody knows, is atrocious at times, and I know that the city does its best to alleviate it as soon as it gets, big enough to put a truck in. But it seems to be an ongoing situation. The paving would eliminate that. The extra gravel and stuff into our parking lot and into our property would be eliminated. And I think it would just be better for everybody. My only concern, which Jeff and I talked about, would be would the city be enforcing the overnight parking once everything is paved? And I think we addressed that, or you and I talked about that, with possibly changing wording on overnight parking to help assist police enforcement. But other than that, we think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for him?
Just a comment.
Yes.
I have some friends who live at the Mirage and face the tides.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday I was over there visiting and heard great compliments from my friend about how you have improved the looks of the tides and the work you're doing there. So thank you.
Yeah, we pay them very well to say those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
There's a lot of history behind the tides.
There's in the picture where, and he was talking about this, how the gravel goes up onto their property. Is there a possibility of putting a curb along there or not? Or does it matter?
Yeah, it depends on how the parking lot hasn't been designed yet, so it'll need to be designed. But depending on where the parking spaces are, our ordinance requirements for parking lots require curbing and setback from private property lines or from property lines. So it'll all come down to how that is designed. We've got to address storm drainage. I mean, there's a little more work than just hiring the asphalt company out there, because we want to maximize our use of the parking lot too. So we want to make sure it's striped appropriately and able to accommodate the vehicles that use it. And as you can see just from this picture, cars are spread quite a ways apart.
Yes.
There's a more orderly way of doing this, and I'll let the professional designers make that determination on maximize the parking spaces we can get out of this. But ideally, the asphalt will completely eliminate the gravel situation to where it either marries up right with that grass line that the Tides has there, or connects to their asphalt so that there's no more gravel.
That'd be great.
It will be a very, very helpful thing. The personal experience I've had with it, with the Salt Makers event in the first weekend of September. This year we increased the attendance because of the Moby Mats being there, probably at least 20-25%. And the biggest issue was a lot of people couldn't park anywhere close. And part of it was simply because people don't always know where to park in this parking lot. So, and a lot of them said too, the hardest part was getting across the parking lot to the Moby Mat. So we're going to take care of that. Just one more step in making Seaside as accessible as possible. Okay, any other comments from the council? May I have a motion?
I move to have a third reading?
Second
reading.
It's up there.
Of ordinance 2025-02 by title only.
I'll second.
Councilor Montero and Councilor Binnicker. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Spencer?
Ordinance 2025-02, an ordinance of the City of Seaside, Oregon, repealing Ordinance 867, which provided for the preservation and control of lands westward of the prom to the ocean front circa 1921.
I move to have a third reading of ordinance 2025-02 by title only.
Second.
Councilor Pasalski and Councilor McVeigh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Spencer?
Ordinance 2025-02, an ordinance of the City of Seaside, Oregon, repealing Ordinance 867, which provided for the preservation and control of lands westward of the prom to the oceanfront circa 1921.
Thank you.
I'll move
Kim?
to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll move to adopt ordinance 2025-02.
I'll second.
It's Counselor McVeigh and Counselor Pasalski. Kim? Roll call vote.
Okay. Counselor Binnicker.
Yes.
Mayor Wright.
Yes.
Counselor McVeigh.
Yes.
Counselor Montero.
Yes.
Counselor Pazalski.
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, moving into a new business and moving to comments from city staff. Looking back there, Carrie, not city staff, but an important part of our city that we always allow you to come up and tell us what. Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone that came out last week. Wednesday, we had the fundraiser for the Community Flower Basket Program, the Bloom and Benefit at Dundee's. I haven't received the numbers yet, but a lot of people came out. I know while we were here at a meeting, they were packed, I heard. So I just really appreciate everyone jumping in, buying tickets, buying flower baskets. There's still plenty of time if you want to. And that is pretty much it right now. We're working on a hiring fair for downtown businesses at the middle school and high school level. And that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I see other city staff back there. Anybody want to come up and talk to us? Okay. John. Okay. Anything coming up, Kim? Okay. Spencer.
I'm really trying to come up with something, but not at this time.
All right. Heidi.
I've got nothing.
Okay. David.
Sure, I got a couple of things. I had the Parks Advisory Committee had a meeting since our last meeting, and a couple of things that are being worked on is a second shower station at Seltzer Park for the surfers. In talking to Paul, it sounds like it's something that we will at some point be able to move forward with in the near future. Parks Advisory Committee is also working on they're calling it Summer in the Parks, and that will be in June sometime, and more details to come on that, but it'll be an opportunity to be able to visit all of the parks on a day with people out there to talk about the parks and how they've become and what they're used for and all the other exciting things happening in the parks. The other thing I wanted to address is we had public comment earlier tonight regarding the busking ordinance. And just to clarify, if it wasn't clear earlier, we have no ordinance on the table yet. We are taking public comment and comment from other people involved so that when that ordinance comes about, we can make the right decisions based on the community's desires.
Okay. Tina.
And last week, I attended the Community Center Commission meeting. In February, there were 1,689 visits to Bob Chisholm Community Center. 60 volunteers gave 180 hours of volunteer time there, and with the worth of a volunteer hour, which is now about $33 an hour, that comes to $6,128.67. The Fascination Tournament was a great success. They had 28 teams. You can't have more than 30 teams. And a total was of $3,111 was raised. And then reminder that the memorial for Lou Newbecker is on March 22nd at the Legion at 2 p.m.
Good. Chris.
Well, I'll add on to the fascination tournament. I just wanted to say, over the last couple of weeks, there's just been so many activities that if it's, bumper cars or fascination or fundraisers, and it's just such a fun community. And thank you to all the organizations that put these things on and organize them and, advertise so that we as residents know what's going on and can go have a little bit of fun before it gets crazy. One thing also that I did that over the last weekend was the Visitors Bureau. In the Visitors Guide, page 35, is the Treasure Quest 2025. And if you haven't done it yet, it's not just for visitors. In fact, we completed the scavenger hunt and went into the visitor center for our patch. And he said, you're only the second resident this weekend that's done this thing. So I guess a lot of tourists are doing it, but I thought it was kind of fun as a resident, got you out and kind of trying to solve the clues and seeing some of the things around the city. So that's all for me.
Okay. Amos.
We've been hearing a lot of comment about the busking situation, and as has been said, there's nothing formal yet. Tomorrow morning at 10, I will be having my first coffee with a counselor, and I am more than happy to talk to anybody who shows up about that. I would love to get input, whether it's on the busking or if it's, the recent drone display that happened over the convention center, which lit up my heart to no end to see that a alternative to fireworks is completely feasible in this town. As long as we can work out the different aspects that go with it. So I absolutely look forward to seeing everybody that shows up and hope to see a lot of good people there.
Where is it going to be?
Controversial Coffee, 10 a.m. in the space formerly housing the Inverted Experience.
Okay. And I attended the library board meeting in place of the counselor that was out of the country, sort of. Yeah. It's fun. And actually, I do accept invitations if counselors want me to show up at one of your meetings. You don't have to, though. It was a great meeting, well run and right down the line on the agenda. They are continuing to do this tax program, and I gave them a couple ideas of things. Maybe we could expand that in the future or in conjunction with the community center. The big thing that's happening right now that Jennifer mentioned when she was here last time about the James books, the community read deal. So the books are available. You can go there. They are working on the new website, and a big focus is trying to get lots of Spanish materials into it. We want to continue to do lots of community engagement with that, and there's just a huge amount that goes on there now. Keep doing that. Get back. Oh, and there might be a few photos floating around of a certain person in the bumper cars at the chamber get together. It was fun while I was in there, except when Robin Knoll really got me. And then the hardest part was getting out.
Of course.
Yeah. I managed to get in there somehow, but anyway, yeah.
All for the bumper cars.
Yeah, but I hadn't been on them for a long time. Yeah, the fun though and the enjoyment. I learned more about the history of the building. It was tremendous, and it's just always great to visit with people. Another big event this weekend. Hopefully, you've gotten your tickets. Jazz and Blues Festival starts Friday night, 8 to 10, and then all day Saturday. We had you can get tickets. The easiest way is to go to the convention center website or just look up Seaside Jazz and Blues and you'll hit it. The Improvement Commission had a really good meeting last week, and our first project was back when we replaced the culvert, and now our second one is in the same area to replace, hopefully replace a wastewater pump station that is desperately needed. So we finally have some money, and this is the point where we're going to start looking and figuring out in the southeast Seaside quadrant where best to spend it and how to use it. Next thing is updates on the League of Oregon Cities legislative priorities. There's a bill called SB 179, and one of the priorities was to make sure recreational immunity was made permanent. It passed out of committee late last week with a due pass recommendation, so it'll be going to the Senate floor. And I think it's already had its either first or second reading. So hopefully that will come through and that won't be a question anymore. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about HB 3556. That is an update on taxing lodging tax and the city's need for flexibility on how the tourism promotion part of that is done. I've given everybody here at the council the one pager from the League of Oregon Cities. It's a short recap on one side, and then it's about 60 cities across the state that are in favor of having this flexibility. And it doesn't go into a lot of detail, but the main focus is to make sure that cities have the option to use some of that promotion for the infrastructure that is used by the tourists. And obviously here in Seaside, that is a big need. We have sewer issues, updates need to be done, our roads need to be fixed. And we already use 100% of our monies on the flexible side, the 30%, for our public safety. We have a bigger staff than what we should normally need for a town of 7,000. I've also given you my letter that is more specific to Seaside. These will be posted to our social media soon and to our website so that people can review them. I'm giving it to the councilors, the rest of the council, so that you know where I'm coming from. If you have any comments on any of this, please let me know. But we want to have a united front when we talk about this to the public. There is no set date yet for this to come before the House Emergency Management, General Government, and Veterans Committee. But you can keep update yourself, just like I do, and get notices from the automated state system called OLIS, O-L-I-S. If you want to get right to the page, just type in your search OLIS space HB 3556 and you'll go right to the page. There are some very interesting points, particularly in Seaside. We have a huge surplus of funds that we cannot spend on anything but tourism promotion because we are a premier destination here on the coast. And we spend our money on the convention center. We have our own visitor center and tourism promotion bureau there. And we spend it wherever we can. And at this point in time, we've got to do something because the money is just, the pile is still getting bigger. And we'll do our best to do everything we can to make sure tourism continues here at the levels we're used to, and if not, grow a little bit, but we really need to manage tourism now. So, off of the soapbox, and we'll pass that on to anybody that's interested in talking to us. My quote tonight actually regards somebody that was an important part of the North Coast, not necessarily Seaside. I went to the celebration of life of former Mayor Sam Stidell of Cannon Beach on Saturday. Learned a lot about him that I didn't know before. There was a good article in the Astorian a couple weeks ago about the Stidell family. But they've had a big impact, not just in Cannon Beach. They were there for over 60 years, but the whole North Coast. And I knew him both as a councilor and as a mayor. But he lived most of his life there. He was in business, and he was involved in city government for over 30 years. All kinds, you name a commission or a committee, he was on it. He also served as a city councilor for 7 years. They have term limits there, so 8 years is total, and then he was mayor for 8 years, altogether over 30. The Coaster Theater, which was very important to him because he was involved in that, as well as something that I've always enjoyed, and that's Civil War reenactment. He was a sergeant in the 1st Oregon, and the theater was packed out. Completely standing room only, people that were there to honor him. So my quote tonight is in honor of Sam. I remind you of this quote. It's from the poet Paul Valéry. There's a French saying somehow to that, but a great man is one who leaves others at loss when he is gone. We are adjourned.